My hands trembled slightly as I handed the small digital recorder to the bailiff. Lorelei's confident smile faltered for just a second as her eyes locked on the device. She had no idea what was on it, but I was about to blow her perfect world apart. But let me tell you how we got here. How my 14-year marriage imploded. How the woman I loved tried to destroy me. And how a 3-minute recording changed everything. I've always loved boats. Something about the combination of wood, water, and solitude speaks to my soul in a way few other things do. After 8 years in the Marines, including 3 tours overseas that left me with a permanent ringing in my left ear and nightmares I don't talk about, I found peace in restoring old vessels to their former glory. Port Blossom, a small coastal town in Maine with more lobster traps than people, became home when I opened Hayes Marine Restoration 7 years ago. I met Lorelei during my last year of service when I was stationed at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. She worked as an administrator at a medical clinic in town. Beautiful, sharp as a tack, and with an infectious laugh that could light up a room. She was everything I wasn't. Social, refined, ambitious. When she agreed to marry me, I thought I'd won the lottery. Our son Silas came along 4 years later, a bright-eyed boy with his mother's intelligence and my stubborn streak. Despite my occasional struggles with adjusting to civilian life, we were happy. Or so I believed. I worked long hours at the boatyard, but always made time for Silas's baseball games and family dinners. Lorelei built a respectable career managing the Port Blossom Wellness Clinic, working directly under Dr. Alistair Finch, a well-respected physician who treated half the town at one point or another. The first sign that something was off came last winter. Small things. Late nights at the clinic for inventory, new clothes, a sudden interest in fitness that had her at the Ultimate Edge gym 4 times a week with her personal trainer, a guy named Zane Rivera. I brushed it off. After 14 years of marriage, people need space to grow, right? I trusted her completely. That trust evaporated on a rainy Tuesday in April when I returned early from a boat show in Portland. I was supposed to be gone until Thursday, but a vendor canceled, cutting the event short. I pulled into our driveway at 3:30 p.m., looking forward to surprising Silas after school. What I didn't expect was the shiny black Audi parked in my spot. Our house isn't fancy. A 2-story colonial on Cedar Street with peeling white paint I'd been meaning to touch up for 2 summers running. But it was ours, purchased with my military savings and years of hard work. As I approached the front door, I could hear music playing inside. Not Lorelei's usual indie folk, but something with a heavy bass that vibrated through the porch boards. I used my key and stepped inside. The living room was empty, but 2 wine glasses sat on the coffee table, one with a smear of red lipstick, the same shade Lorelei had started wearing recently. The music was coming from upstairs. I faced enemy fire in Fallujah with less dread than I felt climbing those 14 stairs to our bedroom. The door was partially open, and the sounds coming from inside left nothing to the imagination. For a moment, I stood frozen, my mind refusing to process what my ears were telling me. Then something snapped. I pushed the door open. There was my wife, the mother of my child, with a man I recognized as Zane Rivera, the tattooed fitness instructor from Ultimate Edge, who couldn't have been more than 30. They scrambled apart, Lorelei clutching a sheet to her chest, her eyes wide with shock rather than shame. "Corbin, you're supposed to be in Portland," she sounded annoyed, as if I'd interrupted a lunch meeting rather than caught her in our bed with another man. Zane, to his credit, looked moderately terrified. He was built like the side of a barn, with tribal tattoos snaking up his arms and a jawline you could cut glass with. But in that moment, naked except for one sock and a wrist full of beaded bracelets, he seemed to realize he was in a very dangerous situation with a former Marine who just had his world turned inside out. "Man, this isn't what it looks like," he started, reaching for his jeans. I laughed, a hollow sound that seemed to come from someone else. "It looks like you're screwing my wife in my bed. Am I missing something?" Lorelei's expression shifted from shock to something harder, more calculated. "Corbin, don't make a scene. Silas will be home in less than an hour." Silas. The mention of our son's name hit me like cold water. "Does he know about this?" "Of course not," she snapped, pulling the sheet tighter. "And he doesn't need to. This doesn't concern him." "Doesn't concern him?" My voice rose despite my efforts to contain it. "His mother is having an affair and it doesn't concern him?" Zane had managed to pull on his jeans and was reaching for his shirt. "I should go." Stay right where you are," I said, my voice deadly quiet. To my surprise, he froze. Lorelei slid out of bed, wrapping herself in the sheet. Corbin, we need to talk. Privately. This isn't how I wanted you to find out. Find out what? That you're cheating? How long has this been going on? She sighed as if I was being deliberately obtuse. It's been almost a year. And it's not just this, she gestured between herself and Zane. I've been unhappy for a long time. We both have. Oh, we have? This was news to me. When exactly were you planning to mention that? I've tried, Corbin. You don't listen. You're either at the boatyard or lost in your own head. Ever since you came back from your last tour, you've been absent. Physically here, but mentally somewhere else. I stared at her, struggling to recognize the woman I'd shared my life with for 14 years. So, this is my fault? I work 60-hour weeks to give you and Silas a good life, and that justifies this. It's not about justification, she said, her voice cooling. It's about reality. Our marriage has been over for years. We're just going through the motions. Zane, apparently having decided he was indeed leaving, pulled on his shirt and grabbed his keys from the nightstand. Lori, I'll call you later. Don't bother, I said. Pack whatever you keep here. You won't be coming back. He looked at Lorelei, who gave him a small nod. We'll talk later, Z. The casual intimacy of the nickname hit me like a physical blow. Z. As if they had a whole vocabulary, a whole world that I wasn't part of. After he left, an excruciating silence filled the room. I could hear the hall clock ticking downstairs, the occasional car passing on our quiet street. Normal sounds from a world that no longer felt normal. I want a divorce, Lorelei finally said, her voice surprisingly steady. I've already spoken to an attorney. We can do this amicably, for Silas's sake. Amicably? I repeated. You've been cheating on me for a year, lying to my face every day, and you think we can do this amicably? She started gathering her clothes from the floor, her movements precise and controlled. It doesn't have to be ugly, Corbin. We can split everything 50-50, share custody, move on with our lives. Just like that? 14 years, just over? She turned to face me, and I was struck by the absence of emotion in her eyes. It's been over. You just didn't notice. That night, I slept in the guest room while Lorelei took Silas out for pizza to explain some changes that were coming. I lay awake until 2 a.m., replaying every moment of our marriage, searching for signs I must have missed. By morning, shock had given way to a dull, throbbing anger, not just at Lorelei, but at myself. How had I been so blind? I was in the kitchen making coffee when they came downstairs. Silas's eyes were red-rimmed, but he gave me a brave smile that broke my heart. Mom says we're going to live in 2 houses now, he said, climbing onto a stool at the counter. Like Jake Donovan's parents. I poured him a glass of orange juice, struggling to keep my voice normal. That's right, buddy, but it doesn't change how much we both love you. That. Lorelei busied herself with Silas's breakfast, avoiding my gaze. I'll be taking Silas to my mother's this weekend while you figure out your arrangements. My arrangements? She finally looked at me, her expression neutral. You'll need to find a place to stay. I'm keeping the house. The casual certainty with which she stated this sent a wave of disbelief through me. This is my house too, Lorelei. I'm not just going to hand over the keys because you decided our marriage is inconvenient. We'll let the courts decide, she said, buttering toast with precise strokes. But Silas needs stability, and this is his home. I'm his stability, I countered, mindful of Silas watching our exchange with wide eyes. And this conversation needs to happen when he's not around. She shrugged. We have a meeting with my attorney tomorrow, at noon. Peterson and Holt on Main Street. Don't be late. I'll bear. It turned out that her attorney was actually our mediator, a slick operator named Martin Holt, who made it clear from the outset that his priority was an equitable resolution that seemed to primarily benefit Lorelei. The terms she proposed were breathtaking in their audacity. She would keep the house, have primary custody of Silas, and I would pay substantial child support plus alimony. The boatyard, my business built with my bare hands, would be considered a marital asset, with her entitled to half its value. When I balked, Holt slid a document across the polished mahogany table. Mrs. Vance has concerns about Silas's safety in your care. I stared at the paper, a formal complaint alleging my unstable behavior, angry outbursts, and concerning symptoms of PTSD that create an unpredictable environment for a minor child. This is bullshit, I said, my voice dangerously low. I've never been anything but loving and stable with Silas. The court will consider your service record and subsequent diagnosis. Holt continued smoothly. Mrs. Vance only wants what's best for your son. I looked at Lorelei, who met my gaze without flinching. You'd use my service against me? Those symptoms were mild and diagnosed years ago. Were they? She asked coolly. The nightmares, the times you've zoned out at Silas's games, the way you flinch at loud noises. Don't pretend you're completely fine, Corbin. We both know better. I left that meeting in a fog of betrayal and rage. Not only was Lorelei leaving me for another man, but she was planning to take everything. My son, my home, my business, my dignity, using my military service as a weapon against me. The worst part was I had no idea how to fight back. She had a head start, an attorney, and apparently no qualms about destroying me completely. That night, sitting in a depressing extended-stay hotel room that smelled of stale cigarettes and disinfectant, I called the only person I trusted implicitly, Griff Wallace, a former Marine buddy who'd become a private investigator after his discharge. Griff and I had served together in our first tour, and though he now lived in Boston, we'd stayed close over the years. She blindsided you, he said after I'd explained the situation, his voice a low growl. Classic ambush tactics. She's been planning this for months, maybe longer. What do I do, Griff? She's using my PTSD against me, making me sound dangerous. There was a long pause on the line. You fight fire with fire. She's not playing fair, so neither can you. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. I'll be up there tomorrow morning. We'll fight. End of that. Griff was true to his word, showing up at my hotel at 7 a.m. the next morning with a laptop, surveillance equipment, and a determined gleam in his eye that I remembered well from our days in the service. He was a force of nature, a stark contrast to the despair that had settled over me. First, he said, spreading files on the dingy hotel desk, you need a real attorney, not some mediator on her payroll. I've got a name, Sterling Croft, retired JAG officer, now specializes in divorces where military service is a factor. He doesn't let people weaponize PTSD. I can't afford a specialized attorney, I admitted, the financial reality of the situation crashing down on me. The boatyard does okay, but I'm not exactly flush. Griff waved this away. Sterling owes me a favor, a big one. Now, second order of business. We need to understand what we're really dealing with. Lorelei is leveraging your PTSD, but there's something off about this whole setup. The boyfriend, the sudden divorce, the scorched earth approach, it feels orchestrated. What are you thinking? I'm thinking we start digging. People who try to take everything usually have something to hide. He pulled out a digital recorder, and we document everything. Every interaction, every call, every text. Maine is a one-party consent state for recordings. Use this to your advantage. Over the next 2 weeks, Griff and I embarked on what felt like a covert operation in my own hometown. While I maintained my normal routine at the boatyard and had supervised visits with Silas at a local park, another humiliation Lorelei had engineered Griff, dug into Lorelei's recent activities and her relationship with Zane Rivera. The boatyard became my sanctuary during those dark days. I threw myself into a restoration project on a 1,958 Chris Craft Continental that had seen better days. There was something therapeutic about stripping away layers of old varnish and damaged wood, getting down to the solid frame beneath. If only relationships could be restored as straightforwardly as boats. My workshop at the back of the boatyard became a refuge. The smell of sawdust and marine varnish, the rhythmic sound of sanding, the precision required for each task, it all kept me grounded when everything else was spinning out of control. During one of our supervised visits, Silas's voice pulled me from my thoughts. We were at Harborview Park, feeding ducks by the pond, while a court-appointed observer sat on a bench pretending not to watch us. Dad, are you mad at Mom? He asked, his voice small. I chose my words carefully. I'm upset about some choices Mom has made, but being mad doesn't help anything. He tossed another piece of bread to an eager mallard. She says you're sick sometimes, in your head, from the war. The casual way he said it, clearly repeating something he'd heard, made my blood boil, but I kept my voice steady. I saw some hard things in the war, buddy, and sometimes I have bad dreams about them. But I'm not sick, and I would never, ever hurt you or anyone else. Silas nodded, seemingly satisfied. That's what I told her. You're the one who checks under my bed for monsters. Mom just tells me monsters aren't real. Then, his voice got smaller. Dad, is it true we might move to Florida? Mom keeps talking about it with Zane when they think I'm not listening. My heart rate spiked. What exactly have they been saying? He looked down. breaking off another piece of bread. That after the hearing, we'll sell the house and move south. Zane says he has friends there who can help him set up a new gym. Mom says I'll like the beaches. He looked up, his eyes filling with tears. But I don't want to leave. All my friends are here, and Grandpa's fishing boat, and you. That night, I told Griff what Silas had said. It only hardened his resolve. His investigation was already turning up disturbing connections. He'd tracked Zane's background to a series of gyms across New England, each one mysteriously closing after about 18 months of operation. His social media showed connections to several known players in underground fighting circuits, not the regulated MMA kind, but bare-knuckle, no-rules matches held in abandoned warehouses with heavy betting. Your wife's boyfriend isn't just a pretty face, Griff said, showing me photos of Zane with several rough-looking men outside a warehouse in Portland. He's running money for some serious operators. What does this have to do with Lorelei? Griff pulled up another file on his laptop. That's where it gets interesting. Look at these deposits to the clinic's community wellness program accounts. He showed me a series of transactions, cash deposits ranging from $5,000 to $15,000, made roughly twice a month for the past year. The wellness programs are Lorelei's pet project at the clinic, Griff explained. Dr. Finch gave her full control over them 3 years ago. It's a perfect setup for washing dirty money. Donations come in as cash from illicit activities, go out as legitimate program expenses. I stared at the screen, trying to process what I was seeing. Are you saying Lorelei is laundering money for Zane's fighting racket? That's exactly what I'm saying, Griff said grimly, and it explains why she's going scorched earth in the divorce. It's not just about leaving you. It's about cutting all ties, taking everything, and getting out of town before you or anyone else might notice something is off. The revelation was staggering. The woman I'd married, the mother of my child, wasn't just unfaithful. She was a criminal, and she was willing to destroy me to protect her new life. The plan was simple but risky. Griff had discovered that Lorelei and Zane regularly met at our house on Tuesday afternoons when Silas had his after-school science club. With my permission, he installed small, legal recording devices in the living room and kitchen, not the bedroom. We weren't interested in their intimate moments, just their conversations about business. While we waited, I met with Sterling Croft, the attorney Griff had recommended. He was a battle-hardened man in his 60s with silver hair and a perpetual squint. He reviewed the initial evidence of the financial irregularities with professional detachment. This is good background, he said, his voice a low gravel. But without a direct connection between these deposits and your wife, it's circumstantial. What we need is for her to implicate herself. We're working on that, I assured him. In the meantime, Sterling leaned back, studying me over half-moon reading glasses. We need to address these PTSD allegations head-on. I want you to get a current evaluation from an independent psychiatrist, not your VA doctor, someone with no connection to either of you. I followed his advice, meeting with Dr. Eleanor Chen, a no-nonsense psychiatrist with experience in combat trauma. After several thorough sessions, she provided a comprehensive report, concluding that while I did experience some PTSD symptoms, they were well-managed, mild, and posed no safety risk to the patient or others, including minor children. It was validating to have a professional confirm what I already knew, but Lorelei's allegations still stung. The idea that she would use my military service, the very thing that had supported our family all these years, as a weapon against me, was a betrayal that cut deeper than the affair. For 2 weeks, nothing useful emerged from our recordings. Lorelei and Zane were careful, speaking in vague terms when discussing anything related to money. But then came the breakthrough. 3 days before our scheduled court hearing for temporary custody arrangements, they had an argument. I listened to the recording with Griff later that night in my hotel room. The clinic's legitimate accountant had flagged some discrepancies in the wellness program funding, and Dr. Finch was asking questions. You told me he never checks the books. Zane's voice was tense. He doesn't normally, Lorelei replied, her tone sharp. But some patient mentioned one of the non-existent programs, wanted to sign up. Alistair started looking into it. Can you fix it? Of course I can fix it. I'll create some backdated materials, say the program ended due to lack of interest. But we need to be more careful, and we need to speed up our timeline. What about Corbin? The hearing is Friday. I heard Lorelei's dismissive laugh, a sound that made my stomach clench. Don't worry about Corbin, I've built a solid case. Once the judge believes he's unstable, and she will, I've got documentation from his VA counselor that I've enhanced a bit. We get everything. The house, full custody of Silas, in that waterfront property his grandfather left him. His PTSD diagnosis is our golden ticket. My blood ran cold. Enhanced. She had falsified documents. What about the clinic money? Zane asked. Is it clean yet? Don't worry about that. I've been running it through the wellness program accounts for months. It's untraceable. Dr. Finch trusts me completely. They continued discussing their plans for after the divorce, moving to Florida once everything was settled, using my grandfather's property as collateral for a loan to expand Zane's fighting business. Throughout it all, Silas was barely mentioned, except as an asset to be secured. What about the kid? Zane asked at one point. Silas will adjust, Lorelai said dismissively. Children are resilient. Besides, he'll be in school most of the day. We'll hire a nanny for the rest. The casual disregard for our son's emotional well-being was the final blow. This woman wasn't just trying to take my possessions. She was treating our child as an inconvenient detail in her grand plan. Listening to the recording, I felt an odd sense of calm replace the hurt and betrayal. This wasn't about love gone wrong or growing apart. This was about greed, pure and simple. And for the first time since walking in on them, I had leverage. Will this be enough? I asked Griff. He smiled grimly. It proves she's planning to lie in court, commit fraud, and it directly links her to the financial scheme. It's more than enough. It's a silver bullet. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, with wood paneling that had seen better days and uncomfortable benches that forced perfect posture. Lorelai sat with her attorney, a power suit making her look like she'd stepped out of a legal drama. She didn't acknowledge me when I entered, but Zane, sitting directly behind her, shot me a smug look that made my fingers itch. Judge Coleman, a woman in her late 50s with an expression that suggested she'd seen it all, entered, and the proceedings began. For nearly 3 hours, I sat silently as Lorelai's attorney painted a picture of me as a troubled veteran, prone to dissociation and mood swings, potentially dangerous to my own child. They brought in Silas's teacher, who reluctantly admitted I'd once seemed distracted at a parent-teacher conference. They submitted my VA records, with certain passages highlighted to seem more severe than they were the passages Lorelai had enhanced. They even had my next-door neighbor testify about hearing me yell once during a phone call with a difficult client. Throughout it all, Lorelai maintained a concerned, almost sorrowful expression, the loving wife who simply wanted to protect her child from an unstable father. It was a masterful performance. When it was our turn, Sterling Croft approached the bench. Your Honor, rather than call witnesses to testify about Mr. Hayes's character, we would like to submit a single piece of evidence that we believe is directly relevant to these proceedings. That's when I stood, my heart pounding, and handed the small digital recorder to the bailiff. As Lorelai's voice filled the courtroom, describing her plan to use my PTSD as a golden ticket to take everything, her carefully constructed facade crumbled. Her face went from confident to confused to ashen white. Zane started shifting in his seat, his eyes darting toward the exit. By the time the recording ended with her casual dismissal of our son's well-being, the judge's expression had shifted from neutral to openly disgusted. Your Honor, Lorelai's attorney began scrambling. This recording was clearly obtained without my client's knowledge or consent. Maine is a one-party consent state, Counselor, Judge Coleman interrupted, her voice like ice. And as Mr. Croft has already established, Mr. Hayes was a legal resident of the home and owner of the property at the time of recording. The evidence is admissible. Section Wadio, she turned her steely gaze to Lorelai. Mrs. Vance, these statements, if accurately attributed to you, suggest an attempt to defraud this court and potentially criminal activity regarding financial matters at your place of employment. Lorelai's composure finally broke. That recording is taken out of context, she said, her voice shrill. Corbin has edited it to make me sound. The recording has been authenticated by a forensic audio expert, Your Honor. Sterling interjected smoothly, sliding another document to the judge. No editing or manipulation. Judge Coleman reviewed the authentication report, then looked up. In light of this new evidence, I am inclined to view Mrs. Vance's claims about her husband's stability with considerable skepticism. Furthermore, I am deeply concerned about her fitness as a primary caregiver, given the apparent willingness to falsify information to this court. She straightened her papers. Mr. Croft, does your client wish to amend his petition regarding custody arrangements? Sterling nodded. Yes, Your Honor. In light of the evidence suggesting Mrs. Vance's involvement in potentially criminal financial activities, we are requesting temporary full custody for Mr. Hayes, with supervised visitation for Mrs. Vance, pending investigation of these matters. Zane chose that moment to stand and head for the exit. The judge noticed. Sir, this court is still in session. Please return to your seat. I'm not involved in this, Zane protested. I'm just a friend of the family. A friend mentioned prominently in a recording discussing potentially criminal activities. Judge Coleman noted dryly. Sit down, sir, or I'll have the bailiff assist you. Ender froze. Zane sat, his face a mask of barely contained panic. Lorelei stared straight ahead, her knuckles white as she gripped the table. Judge Coleman turned back to us. Given the evidence presented, I am granting temporary full custody of Silas Hayes to his father, Corbin Hayes, effective immediately. Mrs. Vance will have supervised visitation twice weekly at the family center until this court reconvenes to make final determinations. She fixed Lorelei with a hard stare. Additionally, I am referring the content of this recording and the associated financial documents to the district attorney's office for review of possible criminal charges, including perjury, fraud, and financial crimes. As the judge's gavel came down, the courtroom erupted in murmurs. Lorelei sat frozen, her face a blank slate of shock. Zane was already heading for the door again, this time unhindered. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Outside the courthouse, Sterling clapped me on the shoulder. That went better than expected. The judge isn't just giving you custody, she's opening the door for criminal charges. The DA will be very interested in those clinic finances. What happens now? I asked, still processing the magnitude of what had just occurred. Now, you go home. To your home, with your son. Lorelei has 24 hours to vacate the premises, and then you start rebuilding. He gave me a knowing look. It won't be easy. Silas will have questions. Lorelei will likely face serious legal consequences. But you've got the truth on your side now. The first night back in our house was surreal. Lorelei had cleared out her personal belongings in a hurry, leaving subtle gaps on bookshelves and in closets that felt like missing teeth. Silas was quiet, confused by the sudden reversal of his mother's carefully constructed narrative. Is Mom in trouble? He asked as I tucked him into bed. I sat on the edge of his mattress, choosing my words carefully. Mom made some big mistakes, buddy. She's going to have to answer for them. Because of the recording? I heard Mrs. Donovan talking about it when she dropped me off. News travels fast in small towns. Yes, because of the recording. Sometimes people say things they shouldn't, and it catches up with them. He was quiet for a moment, picking at a loose thread on his comforter. Did Mom lie about you? About you being sick? My heart broke a little at the directness of his question. She exaggerated some things. I do have bad dreams sometimes from my time in the Marines, but I'm not dangerous, and I would never hurt you. Never. He nodded, seemingly satisfied. I know that, Dad. You're the one who taught me that real men protect people, not hurt them. I kissed his forehead, amazed at his resilience. The aftermath unfolded with the messy complexity of real life. True to Sterling's prediction, the district attorney opened an investigation into the clinic's finances. Dr. Finch, devastated by the betrayal, cooperated fully. Within weeks, the extent of Lorelei's fraud was clear. She had diverted over $200,000 of clinic funds into various shell accounts. Zane had disappeared the day of the hearing, apparently fleeing to Florida without Lorelei. His gym abruptly closed. He was eventually picked up in Tampa for running the same fighting and betting scam down there. 3 months after the hearing, Lorelei was arrested and charged with multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. She accepted a plea deal. 2 years in a minimum, security facility, plus restitution. The day before she was due to report to prison, she asked to meet me at a coffee shop. She looked different, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes, her previously immaculate hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. The confident, calculating woman from the courtroom was gone, replaced by someone who seemed diminished, almost fragile. Thank you for meeting me, she said. I know you have every reason to refuse. Silas asked me to, I replied honestly. He wanted me to give you this. I slid a sealed envelope across the table. A card he'd made, covered in glitter and earnest, misspelled wishes for her to get better soon. She held the envelope without opening it, her fingers trembling slightly. I'm sorry, Corbin, not just for getting caught, for all of it. I don't expect you to believe that, but it's true. I studied her, searching for the woman I'd married. What happened, Lorelei? We had a good life. Was it really so terrible being married to me? No, she said quietly. It wasn't terrible. It was just Ordinary. After a while, I felt invisible. Zane made me feel seen. She finally looked up at me. The things I said about you, about your PTSD, I knew they weren't true. You've always been a good father. Then why did you try to take Silas from me? Because I needed to win, she said simply. In my mind, winning meant taking everything. I didn't think about what that would do to Silas, or to you. It wasn't enough to erase what she'd done, but it was something, an acknowledgement. Take care of yourself in there, I said, standing to leave. Silas needs you to come out stronger, better. He deserves that much. The following weekend, I took Silas to my grandfather's waterfront property, the one Lorelai and Zane had planned to use as collateral. It was just a simple cabin on a rocky point, but the view of the Atlantic was priceless. We spent the day skipping stones and building a fire pit near the shore. Dad, Silas asked as we roasted hot dogs over the flames, are we going to be okay? I looked at my son, his face serious beyond his years in the flickering firelight. Yeah, buddy, we're going to be just fine. But Mom's in jail, and it's just us now. For a while, yes. But your mom will serve her time, and then she'll be back in your life. And in the meantime, you've got me and Grandma and Grandpa and your friends. We're not alone. He nodded. Can we come up here more often? It's peaceful. Anytime you want, I promised. Maybe we could fix up the cabin, make it our special place. He smiled, a genuine bright smile for what felt like the first time in months. I'd like that. 6 months later, life had found a new rhythm. The boatyard was thriving. Silas was adjusting, split between school, baseball, and weekly video calls with Lorelai. The house on Cedar Street had been repainted, a sunny yellow that Silas picked out, claiming white was too boring for a fresh start. One evening, I was in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner. I glanced out the window to where Silas was shooting baskets in the driveway, his face scrunched in concentration as he lined up a shot. The evening sun caught his hair, turning it to fire, just like his mother's. The ball swished through the net, and he pumped his fist in triumph, turning to make sure I'd seen. I gave him a thumbs up through the window, my heart full. Some broken things can't be fixed. They can only be acknowledged and left behind. But others, like an old wooden boat or a fractured family, could be restored. It wouldn't be the same as it was before, but with time, patience, and honest work, it could be made whole again. It could be made strong. We were okay. We were going to be okay.